The Elmhurst City Council. I ask that you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Spencer, I ask that you call the roll.
Dunn.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Polumsky. Here. Graham.
Here.
Paludo.
Uh-oh.
Paludo.
Here.
York. Absent. Levin.
Here.
Park.
Here.
Conquest.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Brennan.
Here.
Sabatino.
Here.
Goiter.
Here.
13 present, 1 absent.
13 present, 1 absent. We have a quorum. We are in session. I want to start this meeting off with a couple of recognitions. Sure. I'm going to ask Chief Freeman and Art Miller to meet me over by the podium. Okay, we actually have two, pardon me. We actually have two things that we're, want to recognize tonight, and we'll do one right after the other. One of them is the American Heart Association has a STEMI award, and these guys tell me that's a fancy name for heart attack. The STEMI award really is something that the American Heart Association works and recognizes within our communities. It's really it's an approach to a problem. And when all the gears work and everybody meshes, the end result is better than if everything didn't work together. And it's really, specifically speaking, it's really about the type of heart attack you're having and what type of treatment you get. And the quicker you recognize if you're having a ST infarction versus a plain old infarction, there's a certain way to treat it, and that's what these guys are here, and I'm proud to say that our fire department is a recipient of this award for their hard work. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Freeman right now.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Grabowski and the council, as a result of your continued support, and we've done a lot of things as of late in the EMS division of the Elmhurst Fire Department, and we're proud, the men and women of fire and EMS in the back of the room to witness this tonight. We have one of the directors from the American Heart Association, and this is the 4th time the city, vis-a-vis the EMS division, has been a recipient of this very high and distinguished award from the Heart Association, the Mission Lifeline for EMS, followed by a specific call that you're going to hear about that exemplifies the great job that these men and women do day in, day out for the residents in Elmhurst. So I want to thank you as a chief for the continued support to EMS, the changes that we've made, and some of the very unique changes with our partner from Metro Superior, who's with us tonight, the Vice President Mike Tillman. But the things like the Rescue One that was put into place a couple of years now has really, time and time again, shown the dividends of rapid response and immediate care to the patients of Elmhurst. And with that, we have a 33-year veteran of the of the Evanston Fire Department, as well as a registered nurse, so he knows from where he speaks, and now a director with the American Heart Association to present the award to the city, Mr. Art Miller.
Well, I guess they covered everything. No, I did want to take a minute to talk about what's called a system of care. So the system of care, as the mayor mentioned, is kind of when the gears all mesh and everything works together. So for the pre-hospital personnel, they can recognize the STEMI, which is the most serious kind of a heart attack, formerly known as the widowmaker. That's where at least 100% or 100% of at least one coronary artery is entirely blocked, meaning at least 30% of the heart is not getting any circulation. That's significant. That is what's called a time-critical diagnosis. These patients need to be rushed into the cath lab, get their coronary artery opened as quickly as possible. Many times, these patients will have a cardiac arrest during this event as well. And many times, the paramedics are able to resuscitate these patients in the field, get them into the ED, they rush them right into the cath lab, and the interventional cardiologists then open up these vessels. I'd like to recognize that it takes this entire system of care. So our requirements to get this award for the fire department also, and for Metro, also includes the hospitals. They have to meet times as well. And so if, let's say, Elmhurst Hospital did not meet the times, then I would not be here tonight giving these awards. So they're working together very closely to make sure these patients survive. So with that, I'd also like to recognize Andrea White. She's the EMS coordinator from Elmhurst Hospital. She's passionate about making sure that her providers in the field are a part of this. This award tonight is one of only 15 in the state of Illinois this year, and so it's with great honor and my pleasure to be here again tonight and present the Gold Award to the Metro Paramedics and Elmhurst Fire Department from the American Heart Association.
So I am merely accepting this on behalf of these folks. I want to talk about our run of the month, and then I want to invite everybody who's up here for a photograph with this certificate. But I'm going to turn it over to Chief Freeman to talk about. So you heard about the system and how we try to work and what our goals are. Now, specifically, we had an ST run that was recognized by Edward Elmhurst as Run of the Month. So it's this exact same thing that we're getting the award for. Here's specifically how we executed.
Thanks again, Mayor. It's great to receive an award like that, but every day the people that you see lined in the back of the room are out on the street providing this tremendous care. And ironically, in concert with this award, we received Run of the Month. Now, the medics have received Run of the Month, Run of the Year, and to a person, they will tell you it's what we do. Some of the medics that were actually on this call that I'm going to ask Chief Don Martinson to come up, our chief paramedic from Metro, and talk about. Some of the medics that were on the call are actually in the room tonight. But this was an Elmhurst resident that was medically, clinically dead and was resuscitated, had a complete occlusion in his heart, and walked out of the hospital 2 days later. So all the awards, it's nice, they fill a hole on the wall, but that's what it's all about, and that's what they do every single day, and it's nice to get a little recognition for them. So with that, Don, please come on up. Don Martinson is our chief medic, been with us for many, many years, and we run the gamut from a year to as many as Don has, and he will explain the Run of the Month that we were just the recipient of.
On June 20th of this year, a 60-year-old male had his wife called 911 because he was having persistent chest pain since 7 in the morning, which is about 8 hours before he called 911. He was found in the bathroom, unresponsive when the paramedics arrived. He had a very weak carotid pulse. They initiated care right away. They put him on the monitor, did a 12-lead EKG, found that he had ST elevation in numerous leads, which is the reason why it's called the STEMI. They rushed him to the hospital. Care was transferred over to Elmhurst Edwards Elmhurst Hospital. He was in the cardiac cath lab within 20 minutes, I believe it was right, under 90 minutes. Under 90 minutes, that's the protocol. And he had stents installed, and he walked out of the hospital within 2 days. Since this call, we've had 2 other calls where very similar situation. One of them, they called the cardiac alert to the hospital, and as they were pulling him out of the ambulance, he went into cardiac arrest. This gentleman was only 58 years old. They got him into the hospital. From the time they got him, transferred care to the air staff to the time he got to the cardiac cath lab, it was only 26 minutes, which is a record for Elmhurst Hospital. The people involved in the first call were Samantha George and Anthony DiCostanzo. Why don't you guys come forward? Along with the firefighters that were on the scene, I do not have the list of who were on that scene. They worked together and they saved this man's life. So, like the chief said, this is something we do every day. So, thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask everybody who's in the back of the room to please come up, and we're going to take a group photo. Don't be shy. I know these people say it's their job, but how many people go to work every day? I market. I'm a marketer. I don't save lives. How many people go to work every day and have an opportunity to save lives, and the least we can do is recognize them?
You need to get up there. Mike, wait a second.
Not anymore.
We used to allow you to do that. They used, it was eligible, now it's not. But I just didn't know if somebody was going around.
Before I ask for another round of applause, I know that everybody up on the dais would like to take the opportunity to thank you personally, starting with Alderman Mulliner. Please walk around. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have another round of applause.
Thank you again. Thank you.
Don't trip. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. All you guys do. Great job. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you very much.
I watched stuff on TV, but it's real.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Thank you. Hey, guys.
Okay, good job.
Watch your step.
Good job.
Thank you. Watch your step.
Thank you, and congratulations. I got it.
Own thing here.
Watch your step.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Watch your step. Thanks. Thank you. You already know, watch your step. It's an honor.
So you did.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Thank you.
Watch your step.
No, over there, Mike. Yeah, you can't.
Watch your step since you're the last person.
What you do? Julie is out.
Widowmaker, he was right. Yes, yes.
Heard it before?
Really? A long time ago.
Yeah, the woman,
100% blockage.
the woman that first came through, she was on.
Oh,
Chief Freeman.
biggest of three.
In keeping with the theme of dedication, I think 3 of those folks had to leave before we even took the picture to go on a call. So,
I thought that's what he asked.
all right. On to agenda item 4, receipt of written communications from the public. At this time, is there anybody in the audience that has any written communication they wish to submit? If so, please raise your hand. Any written communication to be submitted? Seeing none, we'll go on to agenda item 5, public forum. This is an opportunity for anybody in the audience to address the council, specifically the chair, on any item they so choose. Once your name has been called, we ask that you make your way to the microphone over to my right, your left, right there behind Chief Ruth. We are being recorded, so we ask that you state your name. Your address is optional. Out of respect for the work that we need to get done here this evening, and out of respect to others that out of respect to others that may want to speak, we ask that you keep your comment to 3 minutes. If you go over your 3 minutes, I will give you a gentle reminder and ask you to wrap up. Clerk Spencer, at this time, is there anybody who has signed up for public forum?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have anyone that signed up tonight.
Okay, so no one has signed up for public forum at this time. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to address the council but did not have an opportunity to sign up for public forum? If so, please raise your hand so I can get a count. Seeing none, that will conclude public forum, first in my 11 years. No public forum this evening. Announcements. Agenda item 6, any announcements from the dais? No announcements. On to consent agenda. Which one is it, Jim?
7.24.
7.24. Okay. I'm going to pull 7.24, and I'll give an explanation when it comes before council. Is there any other items on the consent agenda any alderman wishes to pull, to vote no, or provide additional comment? Seeing none, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item 7.24. Motion by Alderman Brennan, second by Alderman Sabatino. Clerk Spencer.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
York. Absent. Levin.
Aye.
Park.
Stay.
Aye.
Conquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Consent agenda minus item 7.24 is approved. Okay, so we had 2 Scrivener's errors that we caught before tonight's meeting, and that's the reason why I pulled it. A revised ordinance was sent out, but I want to point out to council that there was Scrivener's errors. This was an older document. Oh, sorry. This is an agreement we have with Messiah Lutheran Church.
No, with Royal York.
Sorry, Royal York. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I apologize. So this is a stormwater project we've been working on for quite some time. The city acquired property behind the Messiah Lutheran Church next to the Royal York condominiums. We acquired the property for stormwater mitigation. After we acquired the property, we were in contact with Royal York, and this allows us to swap properties to, with Royal York that is really more advantageous to both groups, and I'm sure that Alderman Kennedy can get into the details. But in the document that was originally posted, we had 2 dates that were incorrect. One was the date that we would potentially approve this, which was wrong, and then also the closing, we had it listed as already happening.
Right.
So it's actually September 7th, and acceptance would be today, right?
Right.
So those 2 dates were wrong. They have been fixed. They were revised and sent out, but that's why I pulled it, in case any alderman had questions or wanted to discuss it. But the 2 dates have been corrected for this document. I need a motion. With that having been said and that set up, I will entertain a motion to approve agenda item 7.24. Do I need to have Clerk Spencer read it? Yes. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask you to read the ordinance first. I apologize.
Let's see, I don't know if I have it. Do I have the whole?
Here you go. You can just read the top of that.
Is that the same thing? Okay, I've got it. All right, an ordinance authorizing execution of a land swap agreement for the covenants of a portion of city-owned property commonly described as Lot 2 of the Messiah Lutheran Church subdivision in the exchange for a portion of the Royal York condominium common element property, each in Elmhurst, Illinois.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the ordinance as read. Motion by Alderman Kennedy, second by Alderman Deuter. Alderman Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You said everything needed to be said, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that There was a lot of work that happened between city staff, between the folks at Royal York, legal groups, and Chicago Title to get it to the point where we could make this land swap with the end result of having a better project overall for everyone involved, and also provide about 2 more acre-feet of storage. And we know that every drop of water that we can put in that area is gonna help more homes in southwest Elmhurst. So with that, I'm in full support and would ask my fellow aldermen to do the same. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Alderman Bram.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I just want to highlight it even just a little bit more. This is a landmark agreement, and the reason being is dealing with the Royal York Condo Association, how large they are to be able to, through our staff, through our attorneys, Royal York as well, their association, and Chicago Title, as Alderman Kennedy's already mentioned all of those, that this is landmark to be, I don't even know if Chicago Title has ever even gone through this process before. So even though it was laborious, it's really huge that the city of Elmhurst, Royal York, and all parties involved were able to get it to the finish line and get it, as Alderman Kennedy said, as a better project than what we even started with. So kudos to all.
Okay, any additional comments? Alderman Mulliner.
I just want to say that I'm in full support of this, and it's been a long time to get to this, but this is a win-win for everybody. This is a terrific project. It's going to be a real positive for that area, and we appreciate all the work that Royal York did on this project as well, because it was a lot of work on their end to make this happen. So thank you to everybody.
Okay, any additional comments? Clerk Spencer.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
York, absent Levin.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Onquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Goiter.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Ordinance is approved. And not to, well, I certainly think some of the people in the audience are very aware of this project, and I appreciate them, their attendance over the last years, and probably over 100 meetings. But I also want to point out, too, that while this kind of puts the final piece of icing on the cake, this project has already started. This land swap was the last part of it, but we've been digging holes and sticking pipes in ground and kind of causing chaos in the south end of Elmhurst, all for a good cause. So it's not, this isn't just happening now. We've been, as a couple of the other aldermen pointed out, this was a massive undertaking to get this many people and signatures, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we kind of parallel passed this thing so that we could get this project not only approved this year, but I'm happy to say that this project will be functioning this year and will be online before the end of the year. So I want to thank council for all their hard work. On to committee reports, 8.1. This is a report out of BP&Z. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you read the recommendation.
Therefore, the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee recommends that the City Council authorize the Zoning and Planning Commission to hold and conduct public hearings to consider the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance regarding planned unit developments. Signed by Michael Honquist, Chairman, Noel Toledo, Vice Chairman, and Mark A. Mulliner.
Okay, to put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Honquist, second by Alderman Toledo. Alderman Honquist, your report.
Thank you, Mayor. This planned unit development ordinance has been in discussion for some time. I know a lot of aldermen have had questions on it. We just wanted to highlight it. I'll read a brief summary here in a second, but I just want to remind everyone that we're asking your support to move this to the commission, where we'll start a more formal public hearing process. And as everyone knows, as it goes through that process and is reviewed by the commission, it may come back with different recommendations, but this is what we as a committee came up with to put it forward and for the commission to start hearing. So as many folks know, Housel Levine has worked with the city for some time, and they were engaged on this project as well. The intent of the proposed ordinance is to encourage a higher level of design, amenity, and public benefit that can be achieved under current zoning regulations, to ensure that development projects are in line with the community's long-term planning goals, to support creative solutions to stormwater design and sustainability issues, and provide a more streamlined alternative to the zoning entitlement process. Projects that would be affected by this would be projects with 75 feet or more of street frontage in the downtown area, commercial, industrial, or multifamily project greater than 2 acres, and/or single-family detached on 10 acres or greater. In addition to the current public hearing process, the proposed PUD ordinance process requires the developer to meet with staff to ensure the proposed project is compliant with current city planning documents. The developer must meet with residents within 500 feet of the site before submitting an application, and the developer is to meet with the DPZ for an informal review of the proposed project before submitting a PUD application. So those are some of the highlights. Thanks for staff for summarizing that. I know you all have the rest of information. There's plenty more on board docs. And again, we're just looking for your support to move this forward to the commission. Thank you,
Okay.
Mayor.
Any additional comments? Alderman Bram?
Yes, thank you. I don't have any concerns in regards to moving this forward to go through the correct process, starting with the commission. I did want to publicly state some concerns. It seems like we're lowering the criteria for applicants to become or to utilize the PUD process, and that's concerning. In the past, I've heard up here on the dais that due to some of our current restrictions, that's why some businesses, some developments don't come to the city of Elmhurst. Well, those since have been changed. We, by right, allow a higher number of floors, by conditional use, even higher than that. So everything that was discussed in the past of restricting or maybe even preventing developments from coming to the city of Elmhurst has since changed. And we have opened the door greatly, at least in my estimation. The PUD process allows many benefits to any applicant who applies for it. One of which, I believe Alderman Honquist just mentioned it, is a streamlined process. It also gives more flexibility to the applicant. To lower those standards when we've already changed the standards and what is allowed by right, especially in the downtown area, I don't know, at least at this point, I can't justify the reason for lowering parking by more than 5% that's already stated by the PUD process when we hear all the time about parking issues in the downtown area. So I'm excited to see it go through commission and then committee again to see what the recommendations are. So I will vote for it, but I wanted to publicly voice my concerns of changing some of the density, the height, the parking requirements that's part of the PUD.
Any additional comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Honquist?
I also, when I first reviewed it, might have interpreted a few of the things stated there to my colleagues' concerns, but those are actually not concerns. That everything that's in place stays in place today. This just creates a different process for a potential applicant to come to town to review and go through what is out there. So it's actually additive to our process. We're not looking to reduce any of the standards that we have, nor are we looking to create a separate process. This is a way for an applicant to come forward based on the criteria here and actually streamline the process. Anything that we would change, as far as some of those comments at the end, would be after something were approved. So then staff would have the chance to review that. So I just want to clarify that. Thanks,
Okay.
Mayor.
Very good. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to call the vote.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Volumsky.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Udo.
Aye.
York. Absent. Levin.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Goiter.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Agenda item 8.1 is approved. On to agenda item 8.2, another report out of DP&Z. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you read the recommendation.
Therefore, the Development Planning and Zoning Committee recommends that the City Council approve the financial incentive programs for TIF 4, TIF 5, and the downtown TIF as presented and include dollars for the programs in the 2019 budget as outlined herein. Signed by Michael Honquist, Chairman, Noel Toludo, Vice Chairman, Mark A. Mulliner.
Okay, to put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Honquist, second by Alderman Toludo. Alderman Honquist, your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is something, the incentive program that we've actually had in place, I think most of the aldermen understand. What we've done as part of the committee is review and in some cases expand it. If you remember the Brew Point case, at the time, as we have redone our TIFs, we did not have a program in place for TIF 4 or TIF 5. So we did that as a standalone and then discussed that we would come back as a committee and ultimately as a council to update our policies. And this is that effort. So what you see before you is what we've laid out. I'd say one of the positives, most of what we've done is stayed consistent with what was current in the existing policy, which was really focused on TIF 1 or the downtown area. This expands it a bit, which we think is a positive. It also increases the parameters for the facade program, mainly because in a couple of these areas, those projects might need a greater investment. But I would just remind everyone that that would have to come back before us and be reviewed. So most of what we've done is update, like I said, and then also we removed having the facade program in the case of a tear down. So I think a lot of us have had concerns about that as I won't say a giveaway in the past, but something that was part of an incentive that really wasn't applicable, but was part of our code. So we've updated that. And the rest of it, kind of speaks in the details, both in the ordinance and here. I can go through some details, but instead, I think most people can read through it. I'll just turn to questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Questions or comments? Alderman Toludo.
Thank you. I'd also concur and ask for your support on this. I think it's a good expansion of the program so that we don't have some of those uncomfortable and situations where we may want to assist a business and we don't have a program that can do so. I'll speak specifically a little bit on the financing and the budget recommendation. That's my prior committee coming through. One of the concerns that I had on this with the funding levels was, would we be able to still make our debt service payments and things like that? I didn't want to borrow and reduce any kind of obligation we had or any kind of the plans that we had to pay down debt in these different TIF districts. And in this case, we spoke with Director Trozine at our committee meeting, and these were the recommended levels for 2019 so that we can continue to obviously meet all of our obligations and anything additional that we might still be able to do. These are within reason, these funding levels. So, of course, I'm sure that will all be in the budget when we do the budget process fully for 2019, but this will probably be the starting point for that if it gets approved tonight. So thank you.
Okay. Additional comments or questions? Alderman Dunn.
Yeah, I just have a few clarification questions. I think the sign program that's laid out and the retail grant are fairly straightforward, but with the way the facade program is described here, I'm not sure how these figures relate to each other. There's a $60,000 figure that's called out. There's also a $20,000 figure for improved frontage. There's a $30,000 figure for safety and accessibility. There's a maximum of $240,000. So are they separate, or do they roll up into the same award? And then my other question is, we also have a TIF incentive program, which could be high dollar. We've reviewed some of those not so much recently, but in the past, where new projects have come to the city for TIF incentives. And I am wondering, would this be an additional award or consideration on top of any TIF incentive that might come before the council? And do we feel we'd entertain that type of request by an applicant? So,
Alderman Honquist?
you understand.
Sorry, Bob. Alderman Honquist?
Yeah, I was asking, I understand why there's some confusion. I'm going to read kind of a summary real quick, just for your benefit, and hope to answer the question there and maybe some other questions. Specifically for this facade program and the TIFs, the program is administered by staff with final approval by city manager for all requests that are $60,000 or less. Grant requests greater than $60,000 require review by the DPZ committee with city council approval. New and existing property owners of single-tenant or multi-tenant commercial buildings containing first-floor retail/commercial space within the boundaries of North York, Lake Street, and downtown TIFs are eligible. Once maximum reimbursement is reached on a property, the property is not eligible for another facade program for 20 years unless they seek and receive city council approval. And the amount of the incentive is based on $800 per linear foot of improved frontage at 50% reimbursement for qualifying work. So in other words, they get 50% of whatever the work was, up to a maximum grant of $240,000 based on ultimately 300 square feet. So I know it's a little bit confusing, and you're looking at me like you're still a little bit confused. But effectively, as was before, if there is a business that comes in, for instance, it's a retail, or going to do retail, they would still be eligible for a retail grant. And then obviously, if they were going to do a facade program, that's normally with the business unit owner. And so then the business unit owner and/or applicant could go through that process. Does that make sense?
Yes. Sure. I'm wondering, just to follow up, the actual TIF incentive program that tends to be a pay-as-you-go project, would that be, would an applicant be able to have several of these programs in play on any one project?
Well, let me answer your question. We've done that in the past, Alderman Dunn, so there's obviously been TIF incentives that have been multi-million dollars. And these smaller programs don't cover that. That's just a pathway. A lot of times when we've done that, we've actually included a couple of these types of agreements in that larger agreement. So one doesn't preclude the other, if that helps. Does that make sense? Alderman Toledo.
Yeah, just for further clarification, I think, because another alderman had a question that kind of was similar to that, and, one of the things to note here, first off is tear downs and new construction are not eligible for the facade program. So most often, the folks that are coming to the city for TIF incentive, like sales tax incentive or things like that, or other types of bigger agreements, are tearing down and building brand new. So facade would not be an eligible program for them. And typically, as you know, Alderman Dunn, a lot of those types of new construction projects are negotiated under a completely separate agreement, as the mayor kind of alluded to. So I hope that helps you. I think the concern is that they're going to be double dipping in all these different programs, and I think a big brand new project is not going to qualify for this facade program. They're going to have their own negotiated agreement that is going to come all the way through us for approval if we think it makes sense.
Okay. Any additional comments or questions? Alderman Bram?
Thank you. I want to say that I read through this and I like the agreement. I mean, I think the committee, I applaud the committee. They've really dotted the i's and crossed the t's. When I started to write down questions, for instance, one of which being, is there a maximum amount that could be utilized for the facade program so they don't keep, a new business moves in and keeps on adding and redoing the facade on the city dime, and that's covered in here as one of the questions that I had. A general question on why the committee decided to specify these 3 TIFs instead of just having it in all-out, any TIF district, present or future. Why wouldn't it be an open approval process for any TIF compared to 3 out of, don't we have 4 now? 3 out of the 4 that we have today.
Alderman Honquist? Let me make sure I understand your question. Alderman Bram, you want to know, it's in the 3 most recent TIFs that we've passed, but it's not in,
St. Charles and,
TIF 3 is the only one that's left. We closed 1, we closed
Yeah, we closed, yeah.
2.
Well, it ended, and then TIF 3 was project specific.
Yeah, this gets confusing.
Okay, so the only one that's left is TIF 3, which is the Public Works Garage, and
right.
that's got 2 years left.
True, but what about future TIFs too? Why make not an agreement, I keep saying agreement. Why put this process in place or these grants in place for just current TIFs? If we think it's a good thing, I think it's a good thing moving forward for any TIF that may come across in the future as well. So I'm just wondering on why we're specifically detailing these 3 TIFs, leaving out the 4th TIF that's currently open, but also preventing future TIFs. Not saying there's any plans, press, for any future TIFs, but opening the door for future TIFs to have these same type of programs.
Alderman Conquest, Alderman Bram seems to be in favor of another TIF.
I don't know how you quote me, I don't know.
That's what I got out of it.
I think we were just addressing what we have before us. Obviously, if we put another TIF in place, we could expand, the policy. But we were trying to address, this policy was originally designed for TIF 1 in downtown, so we did expand it. I think your comments are on. If we added another one, we could obviously do that. We also, as Alderman Toludo mentioned, we talked about doing Spring Road, but just given the dynamics there, didn't think it fit. So we decided not to include that. So we did discuss that and decided to stick with the 3 active ones that are out there. TIF 3, for instance, also would not, it's all relatively new, would not fit into this scenario, so.
Any other comments?
Yes, sir. So just 2 other questions, and this is in regards to, I'm forgetting which one it is now, the retail grant program that's proposed. The 2 items in that program being specific for restaurants, being the black iron, having a specific benefit or additional dollars for that, and then marketing. The way I personally look at the retail grant program is something that they're renovating either the building, construction internally, benefiting not only the current business, but even possibly future businesses that may utilize that space. I'm looking for feedback on why that there's, 1, a specific benefit for food service or restaurants, and then 2, why would we have dollars allocated or give dollars, city dollars, for marketing efforts instead of just construction?
Alderman Conquest.
So our attitude towards updating this was basically to give staff, and you'll see even with some of the dollar figures are larger. As I first stated, none of this is guaranteed to anyone to come in. There is a process to review and either go through staff, and staff would make determination whether these programs make sense, or ultimately come to the committee and to council. So we put forward a few additional items like that, given staff recommendation on what they're seeing in the marketplace when they did comparisons to other communities, and when they've had discussions with either developers or other businesses, so that they have the leeway to potentially pull these in and use them as incentives. For instance, the restaurant and/or a marketing program, if that makes sense in the particular use case, so that we are more business-friendly, and staff has the ability to go outside what was in the previous policy and include those types of topics in their discussions and/or negotiation and/or incentive program. So in general, from a policy perspective, we're trying to give a little bit more latitude, both for staff in discussion as well as in businesses as they look at Elmhurst, to say Elmhurst is progressive as far as what they're doing in their policy with the business community and in their incentive policies. I think staff did a really nice job with some of those. Those were two in particular that we decided to support because they made sense.
Alderman Levin.
Thank you. I'd spoken to the chairman briefly about the black iron ductwork, and I'm trying to think back on that a little bit. Do we require that? I didn't think we did as the only kind of exhaust that a restaurant could have, and I'm wondering if an applicant came in and said they're doing aluminum or stainless steel or something else, is this saying, well, we only do black iron for a grant? Or I'm trying to see if there was any discussion, because this is sort of a newer concept than I've seen from the, do you have a black iron ductwork specialist on the committee?
I'm turning the committee. Black iron is a generic term that covers those different types of scenarios, according to my colleague.
All right, well, that wasn't really my understanding. I thought it was one type of ductwork, but it seems maybe we're making a legislative record here, but I don't know, we wouldn't just say applicants installing exhaust systems for food service.
Okay, any additional comments or questions?
Oh.
Alderman Toledo.
I was just going to respond to a prior question on the marketing, specifically on the marketing efforts. Marketing dollars were covered prior in the prior retail grant program in TIF 1. So that's always been part of our program for a very long time, and just being a member of the retail grant committee for about 2 years, small businesses really can use the help just to get the word out. You know, the last thing we want is a new business coming to town and they don't have enough money to market themselves, to drive the foot traffic that they're there. So it's a small way that we can help them be successful, and we want them to be successful and pay sales tax to the city. And then I would also add, one of the reasons why I really supported the black iron, quote, black iron applying to all types of exhaust systems, which is a new, basically is supporting some incentive that's a little bit more tailored to the restaurant industry, is, when we look at the landscape of how our town is changing in the retail industry and how, we talk a lot about Oak Brook and the mall there and what they're doing, it's the entertainment side of things that's driving a lot of foot traffic and business, not as much the actual shopping, retail, boutique kind of thing. So I think as we look to the future, it's important for us to incentivize and to assist some of these other types of businesses to be successful as well, especially if they're building out what used to be a retail space and turning it into a restaurant. That's something that we can do. This is now something that we can do to help them do that, and I think that's just going to behoove us as the dynamic of retail changes over time. Thank you.
Alderman Bram.
Yes, and thank you, Alderman Toledo, for shedding light that the marketing piece was in our previous TIF 1 retail grant program. I just have a hard time. I get being business friendly. I always struggle with and always contemplate in regards to what degree. We're talking public dollars giving to a private entity. Construction, like I stated in my earlier comments, I get that. That's improving the physical structure. I consider the black iron as part of that construction. I'm still a little bit unclear on why additional dollars would be needed for that. But I'm okay with that. I just have a hard time saying that, you know, if a business opens up and they weren't prepared to market their own business, why do public dollars go to market their business? Again, construction that improves the physical structure, indirectly, I think the city sees a return on that. I don't feel that there's a need for public dollars to be utilized privately for marketing efforts. And even though, albeit that it was in the previous retail agreement, I'm going to make a motion to remove on page 2 and any other subsequent areas, any dollars being allocated to marketing efforts for the retail grant program.
Alderman Bram, where on page 2 are we?
Bullet item 2, towards
again?
the end of the sentence.
Do you see where we are?
Applicants are eligible to receive reimbursement of up to 50% of verified qualified expenditures for both marketing efforts and construction.
Okay.
So just expenditures for construction.
So remove both marketing efforts.
Correct.
And. So the motion to amend the report, and as you said, any other place where relevant, but to remove marketing efforts.
Correct.
Fair enough?
Yes.
We have a motion on the floor to amend the report. Do I have a second? Seeing none, motion fails for lack of a second. Continued conversation. Alderman Levin.
I would like to make a motion, I would want to move to strike the black iron from that because I feel that it has potential problems. If we are willing to underwrite kitchen exhaust systems, if that's what whoever's making the decision does, I think black iron only confuses it because I think that relegates it to one kind of exhaust system. I think it's clear if we just say it's kitchen exhaust systems.
Applicants installing exhaust systems for food service. Remove a black iron. We have an additional motion to remove a black iron from the report, and it would just read applicants installing exhaust systems for food service purposes. We have a second. Alderman Bram, yes, okay. Discussion. Alderman Toledo.
I don't know how to procedurally do this, but the committee believes that, quote, black iron applies to all types of exhaust systems. Can we ask our staff member who deals with this more frequently if that is the case or not?
Well, let me add a wrinkle just for the conversation. Trying to be as factual as possible. I have many friends in the restaurant business, and black iron refers to a specific type of exhaust system, not just a black iron exhaust system, but it's an exhaust system that is over a cooking apparatus that is done, I think it's by code, actually, you need it for fire and what have you. If you don't specify black iron, it's just my opinion on the situation. I believe, though, then you might get caught in what's an exhaust system. I've got a fan that blows stuff out. That is not the purpose. The purpose of black iron is literally a giant black iron hood that sits over the cooking surface. So I would have concerns that by removing black iron, you might make it too generic or too general. But Alderman Toledo, your question is, can we have somebody address the council? Mr. Copper, are you prepared to do so? Do you have an opinion on black iron? Do you have an opinion? I just need to know. Like, do you? All right, I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules to allow Alderman, sorry, not Alderman yet, wait until he retires. A motion to allow Assistant City Manager Kopp to address council and answer questions. Motion by Alderman Toledo, second by Alderman Honquist. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Alderman, sorry, did it again. Gonna happen someday. Guy can't say no to Elmhurst. He loves it. Assistant City Manager Kopp. There seems to be some conversation about black iron. Would you care to shed some light on the subject?
I think
doesn't matter either way. A black iron is a generic term for an exhaust system. There are specific, back in the day, it was a black iron welded system per se. If you look at it today, you look under black iron, you can see it's stainless. There's different options now. Black iron is used more of a generic term for the exhaust system for restaurant food service, as I understand it.
So it's like in the industry when they say white appliances. Everybody knows that's dishwashers, refrigerators, et cetera, even though dishwashers and refrigerators might be stainless steel.
Right, because it could be a stainless steel system. It can still be called, generically called black iron for a restaurant.
Okay.
Wait,
Alderman Toledo?
can I follow up?
Absolutely.
Or suspended
You have
rules?
another question?
So if we leave the report as is, or if, let's say, if the report gets changed as per the motion that's been made, is it the intent, let me ask you this, it was the intent, I believe, can you verify that of the work that you and Mrs. Jason did, to help restaurants with any sort of exhaust system, because that's a big capital expenditure. And would the cost of that be different if it's truly black iron versus some other type of installation? Because what I think, the risk that I see of potentially changing it to any exhaust system is, I think, kind of to what the mayor was saying. If the exhaust system is like just some cheap exhaust system, and, I mean, I guess it would have to still meet our building code, but I want to be careful about the types of things that we're allowing to be reimbursed for.
Well, if it's an exhaust system for a restaurant per se, for fryers, for grills, it's not going to be an expensive system. They're expensive systems to put in regardless if it's a black iron, if it's stainless steel, if it's whatever the product is it's made from. So, I mean, the standard that they have to meet per our building code, per the health department, it's not going to be just a fan per se.
Okay. So you wouldn't, okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Assistant City Manager Kopp? Okay, thank you, Mr. Kopp. I didn't see your hand. Do you have a question for him?
Yeah, it was up, yeah.
Alderman Bram?
You'd always be looking left. With that said, would it be better, instead of saying black iron, just saying per code? I mean, I think that's the intent, is to match up with what's in code today.
Now, in the report, we put black iron as a generic term for an exhaust system per se, a code-compliant exhaust system for a food service industry.
Okay, thank you.
Might I suggest, I believe, I'm trying to, I don't think there's anybody opposed to what we're trying to do here, this specific point. I believe that black iron is a ubiquitous term for exhaust systems specifically for the food service industry. My concern is that you start paying for exhaust systems in bathrooms and in the front of the restaurant and everything else. That's not what this is. This is a giant hood over the cooking surface. With that understanding of the council, whatever happens with this motion, whether black iron is in or out, this is the report. The ordinance, and I think staff has a good earful of what we want it to cover. We don't want it to omit anything that it's intended, but we certainly want it to cover the, I hate to use the term, black iron exhaust systems that restaurants put in. However that staff wants to put that in the ordinance, we look forward to reading it at that time. That having been said, we have a motion before us to remove black iron from the report with, I think, the understanding of everyone on the dais of what the intent of this report is. Any additional comments as it relates to the motion to remove black iron? Alderman Levin. Alderman Levin.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Just, I understand, the intent is what we're looking for, but I'm not sure we have an ordinance that's going to be adopted as a result of this report. It's just a policy.
Going to be a resolution or an ordinance?
I don't think we have an ordinance. I was just saying to Alderman Levin that I was wondering whether or not we had, and I was going to ask Mike Kopp, whether or not we had an existing policy, and if so, we would modify that policy by resolution. So that was I even made that note to I'm not sure whether we have an ordinance or it's just an existing written policy.
Retail grants and existing written policy does not specifically give extra dollars for an exhaust system, though the retail grant that is currently in place can be used towards the exhaust system. The current policy is $10,000 maximum. No more than 50% can be used for the construction. And that 50% could go to the duct system if they wanted to. There's no limitation on what it can be used for as far as construction.
So it's a policy?
It's a retail grant policy, yeah, that
Policy.
it was approved. The last one I think it was updated was 2011, 2012, and that's when we changed it to allow the marketing dollars other than just construction.
Is that
costs.
policy approved by council, Mr. Cobb?
I believe it was.
We'll have a resolution there, as you said,
So we'll have a resolution that includes
to
the
adopt
policy?
this policy, yes.
Okay. Additional, we're going to bleed over, but motion before us is to remove black iron. Additional comments? Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. One of my questions about the exhaust system is, are there some businesses that would qualify for food services, like an ice cream shop, that might not need this type of exhaust system? Because I think our intention is really, when we talk about food service, we're talking about restaurants, not just other places that might have food that they sell, that has health department requirements and building code requirements. I think just as we talk about the intent, I think we want to make sure we're hitting restaurants that have the big grills that others have talked about. And I guess part of my concern about taking out the black iron is that we might then end up with something that's generic enough to hit a restaurant or a food service business that does not require this extensive an exhaust system.
Alderman Mulliner.
If a food service facility such as an ice cream shop or something like that doesn't require a black iron solution, they're not going to be able to get the grant because they won't be able to apply for it because it just won't exist in their facility. And there are some food services that probably won't have that, but the ones that cook will have it in most cases.
Alderman Deuter.
Just to clarify my point, I understand that, and I get that that's the intent. My concern is if we take out black iron in this motion, then are we therefore allowing some of those other non-restaurant businesses to be eligible?
I think that's a valid concern. Someone on the other side of the retail grant asking could make the case. Okay, additional comments? I will now entertain a motion to remove black iron from the report. I'm sorry, that is the motion before us. I'm asking Clerk Spencer to call the vote.
Dunn.
No.
Leader.
No.
Polumsky.
No.
Graham.
No.
Toledo.
No.
York, absent. Levin.
Aye.
Park.
No.
Lundquist.
No.
Kennedy.
No.
Mulliner.
No.
Brennan.
No.
Sabatino.
No.
Goiter.
No.
So that's 1 aye, 12 nays, and 1 absent.
1 aye, 12 nays, motion to amend fails. On to the original motion before us, which is approval of the report. Any additional comments? Clerk Spencer.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Polumsky.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
York, absent. Levin.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Lundquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Goiter.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays. Motion carries. Agenda item 8.2 is approved. On to reports and recommendations of appointed elected officials. 9.1, Mayor Morley, that is me. A couple things to report. First of all, I think it's already been set up on the dais, but I will repeat. Cool Cars Under the Stars is back. Thursdays at the Legion, not every Thursday, it's like every other Thursday.
13th.
What is it?
Next one's the 13th.
Next one's the 13th. You can go on the Legion website, or you can go on Explore Elmhurst, and you can get the details. But Cool Cars Under the Stars is back at the American Legion at the south end of town. Would like to report, very happy to report, that I was a judge for, I think, the 4th annual Q for a Cause. That's an event hosted by the Elmhurst Walk-In Assistance Network. They do a lot of great stuff in town. They're Elmhurst-based charity that I think they're saying is something like connect resources within town with people in need or something of that nature. I probably butchered it. They do a wonderful job. We had a chicken contest, a rib contest, and a sauce contest. It was held at the Knights of Columbus in the back, and the weather held out. We had a cloud burst for 30 seconds that caused panic, but then after that, everything was great. So I want to thank all the participants, everyone who came out to support them, Jackie Crinklaw, and everybody at the Walk-In Assistance Network for their work and what they do for the city of Elmhurst. Finally, Rock the Block. Summer is coming to a close. Rock the Block is this weekend. You can get details on the City Center website or on Explore Elmhurst website. It's this Friday and Saturday. Friday from 4 p.m. to 11, and Saturday from 11 to 11. Bunch of bands. We close off the downtown, and happy to report that it is so successful for that day, both days, we're adding 2 trolleys instead of just one. And you can go on, and we have a trolley app that tells you where that trolley is. And that's it for me. City Manager.
Thank you. 2 items. Tuesday, September 11th, the city, more specifically the fire department, will be holding a 9/11 remembrance ceremony at Station 2 at 8:30. All are welcome. From being there last year, I can tell you that the fire department does an excellent job in appropriately remembering that day. And then if Rock the Block isn't enough for everyone, the weekend after that, the Heritage Foundation and the History Museum will host the 4th, I believe it's the 4th, Craft Beer Fest. So that's Saturday, September 15th from 1 to 5. You can gain early entry at noon, though, through an additional ticket. So please see Dave in the audience, Dave Oberg, if you would like tickets. And I believe they're still looking for celebrity bartenders to help pour. So if anyone here would like to do that, by all means, please see Dave as well.
Okay. Any other reports? Alderman Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to give a brief report on the last Fly Quiet Committee meeting that took place on August 23rd. I think we are on our 3rd meeting as a permanent standing committee as part of the O'Hare Noise Compatibility Commission. Main focus of that meeting was to look at some of the technical aspects of planning and nighttime runway rotation, and a lot of good questions were asked by those on the committee. Specific actions that were requested by the committee of the CDA to research was, one of them was to investigate the possibility of a 6-week one-way rotation schedule, which would be north parallels, south parallels, and diagonals. That would actually be a good rotation schedule for Elmhurst, being that we'd only be impacted by a third of the weeks in that rotation. Also, there was some focus on the north and south runways and really challenging the operating assumptions that they don't want to open those runways at night because they have to have the north and south towers open to run those, to have those far north and far south runways operate. So really challenging the CDA and the FAA as to why that is and can we get that changed. The one long runway, 10L, it's kind of middle of the airport, maybe a little south of the midsection as a parallel. That's the longest runway, and that by default generally stays open all the time because the real big planes need to land on that. So one of the questions was these newer runways that are being extended, can they function as the long runway at night, so as to not rely so much on that 10L, which that generally wouldn't impact Elmhurst, but it is critical for the overall plan. And we added another point to look at the consecutive community impact criteria that sort of drove us to a every other week diagonal parallel setup that we're going to start next April is the estimated date of that. So we're asking for some information on that. Statement, we looked at the timeline of the O'Hare build-out and then the, what is the permanent fly quiet going to look like? And there would have to be another environmental study if some rotation were to come about, and the FAA, CDA estimate that would take 2 years, that particular study. So after this fly quiet committee would recommend a plan, and that if it were to be forwarded by the CDA and the FAA, it would take 2 years to evaluate it before we'd move to that. The other, so as far as the next meeting for the fly quiet, that is going to be September 17th in the friendly confines of the Bensonville City Hall. And the next ONCC meeting is actually this Friday at 8 a.m. That's my report.
Okay, any other reports? Alderman Bram, you
Just one
seem
question.
pensive.
One question on the O'Hare. I've been asking this, I guess, routinely every quarter. Any word on the construction of the 422s and how they will be impacting this fly quiet pattern? That hasn't been discussed at the meetings that I have asked the question. I have not received personally a response from that question, but that is a big question mark, and how much traffic we'll be getting on the 422 that impacts us.
Alderman Dunn, you have any information on that?
Yeah, just to follow up on Alderman Bram's question, this Friday at the ONCC meeting at 8 a.m., one of the agenda items is the construction schedule update. So I think just those topics will be discussed.
Thank you.
So hopefully you and all of us will have our answer then.
Okay, any other reports? Seeing none. Any other business? Good to see our treasurer back.
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Alderman Mulliner, second by Alderman Honquist. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.